The humid air hung thick over the Louisiana Bayou like a shroud, the kind that clung to skin and seeped into bones. It was 1807, and the Triplet sisters, Eulalie, Evangeline, and Estelle, glided through the cypress knees with the silence of shadows. Born under a blood moon, they were inseparable, their faces mirror images of sharp cheekbones and eyes like polished obsidian. Eulalie, the eldest by minutes, led with cautious grace, her fingers trailing the moss-draped branches as if reading secrets from the bark. Evangeline followed, her wit sharp as a filleting knife, always ready with a murmured jest to slice the tension. Estelle brought up the rear, brave and unyielding, her hand resting on the hilt of a bone-handled dagger hidden in her skirts. They weren't like the other Creole families scraping by on traplines and gumbo pots. The sisters had a gift, or a curse, depending on who whispered it in the backrooms of New Orleans taverns. They could sense the unseen currents of the swamp, the whispers of spirits long drowned in the murky waters. Tonight, they sought something more tangible, a lost cache of Spanish gold, rumored to lie buried near the old trading post where the bayou forked like a serpent's tongue. Their father had spoken of it before fever took him, his dying words a map etched in delirium. "For you three," he'd rasped, "the bayou's daughters." Eulalie paused at the water's edge, her bare feet sinking into the soft mud. The skiff they'd poled from their hidden cabin bobbed gently, laden with lanterns and coiled rope. "Feel that," she said softly, her voice barely rising above the chorus of frog croaks. The air had shifted, carrying a faint rot that wasn't just the usual decay of sunken logs. Evangeline smirked, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. "Feels like the devil's breathin' down our necks. Or maybe it's just Thibodeau's hounds again, sniffin' for trespassers." She glanced back toward the distant glow of their cabin, a speck of light swallowed by the night. Thibodeau, the trapper from upriver, had been eyeing their land for years, claiming the sisters owed him for protecting the bayou from witches. As if they needed his sour-faced vigilance. Estelle stepped forward, her eyes scanning the twisted roots that clawed up from the water. "No dogs. This is older. Like the ground's uneasy." She knelt, pressing her palm to the earth. A shiver ran through her, not from cold, the bayou never cooled enough for that, but from something deeper, a tremor in the soil itself. The sisters shared a look, the kind that needed no words. Their bond was woven tighter than the Spanish moss overhead. They poled the skiff deeper into the channel, the paddle slicing through water black as ink. Fireflies danced in erratic patterns, their lights pulsing like warnings. Eulalie hummed a low Creole tune under her breath, the melody meant to soothe restless spirits. But, as they rounded the bend, the old trading post came into view, or what was left of it. Timbers sagged into the mire, vines choking the walls like veins. No gold glinted in the lantern light, but something else caught Estelle's eye, a fresh scar in the mud, boot prints too large for any local, leading toward a cluster of willows. "Someone's been here," Estelle whispered, gripping her dagger tighter. The prints vanished into the underbrush, swallowed by the gloom. Evangeline's jest died on her lips, even she felt the weight now, the bayou holding its breath. Eulalie steered closer, the skiff scraping against a hidden root. "We take what we came for and go. No lingering." But, as they tied off and stepped onto the rotting dock, a low rumble echoed from the depths, not thunder, but the groan of shifting earth, as if the swamp itself was stirring awake. The sisters pressed on, lanterns casting long shadows that twisted like fingers reaching for their heels. The cypress knees jutted from the murky water like the knuckles of drowned giants, and Elias gripped his paddle tighter, the wood slick under his palms. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the evening chill creeping through the Spanish moss. Marie sat behind him in the pirogue, her eyes scanning the shadows that thickened along the banks, while Henri poled them forward with steady, silent strokes. They'd pushed deeper into the bayou after dawn, chasing whispers of Elias's missing cousin, Jed, who'd vanished 2 weeks back while tea-radding pelts. The guide had warned them at the outpost, stay to the main channels, avoid the fog-shrouded cuts, but Elias couldn't shake the pull of those old family ties. A low hum started then, faint as the buzz of hidden insects, rising from the left fork where the water narrowed into a tangle of roots. Henri froze mid-pole, his wiry frame going rigid. "That's no frog chorus," he muttered, voice low and edged with something sharper than caution. Marie leaned forward, her hand brushing Elias's shoulder. We turn back. The sun's dropping fast. But Elias shook his head, stubborn fire in his gut. Jed came this way. We skirt it. Listen close. If it's trouble, we paddle like hell. They veered toward the hum, the pirogue slicing through lily pads that slapped against the hull like wet hands. The sound grew, weaving into a melody. 3 voices, high and lilting, singing in a patois Elias half recognized from childhood tales. Sisters, maybe, or spirits mocking the lost. Unri's face paled under his wide-brimmed hat. Les Triples, he whispered, as if naming them summoned the fog rolling in thicker now, swallowing the treetops. Elias felt a chill coil in his chest, but he forced a grin for Marie's sake. Just bayou folk, singing for supper. We pass quiet, no harm. The plan unraveled when the current shifted, pulling them into the fork despite Unri's frantic poling. Vines snagged the boat's sides, thorns scraping like claws, and the singing sharpened, words emerging, Viens, cher, dans l'eau profonde. Come, dear, into the deep water. Marie's breath hitched. She clutched her shawl, eyes wide on the bank where 3 figures flickered in the mist, slender shadows with hair like unraveling webs, moving in eerie sync. Elias's heart hammered. Paddle back. Now. But the pirogue lurched, caught on a submerged log, and one of the figures stepped closer to the edge, her face a pale blur, lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Unri cursed, jabbing his pole to dislodge them, but the wood splintered against something unyielding beneath, a trap, woven from cypress bark and bone. The boat tilted, water sloshing over the gunwales, soaking their boots. Marie screamed as a hand, cold, insistent, brushed the edge, fingers like moss-slick roots. Elias swung his paddle, connecting with air, and the singing laughed, tripling into a chorus that echoed off the water. They broke free at last, the current spitting them back into the main channel, but not before Elias glimpsed it, a crude dock half hidden by ferns, strung with drying nets that glinted wrong, like they held more than fish. Panting, they drifted in silence, the fog thinning just enough to reveal the fading light. Marie's hands trembled as she wrung out her skirt. That wasn't folk. That was them, the triplets. Stories say they drown the unwary, feed the gators their secrets. Unri nodded grimly, wiping blood from a thorn cut on his arm. And, worse, they twist the lost into their own. We should have turned at the outpost. Elias stared at the darkening water, the hum lingering in his ears like a hook. Jed's trail led here, but now the bayou felt alive, watching. They'd camp on higher ground tonight, he decided, rifles close. But the doubt gnawed, sharp as the thorns. What if the singing had already marked them? The mist clung to the cypress knees like a shroud, turning the bayou into a labyrinth of shadows that twisted with every paddle stroke. Elias gripped the pirogue's edge, his knuckles white against the worn cypress wood, while Lottie sat rigid in the bow, her eyes scanning the murky water for any sign of the triplets' traps. Old man Thibodeau poled them forward from the stern, his breath coming in ragged huffs, the fever from yesterday's bite already sapping his strength. They'd lost the main channel hours ago, drawn off course by whispers in the wind, lies, Elias told himself, but the air felt heavier now, laced with the rot of something unnatural. Keep it quiet, Thibodeau muttered, his voice a gravelly rasp. He wiped sweat from his brow, the poultice on his arm oozing green ichor. They hear everything out here. Like ghosts with teeth. Lottie shot him a glance over her shoulder, her face pale but set. Ghosts don't leave footprints, and we saw those in the mud back by the oak. 3 sets, small and quick. They're real, and they're close. She adjusted the rifle across her lap, the barrel glinting faintly in the dim light filtering through the Spanish moss. Elias admired her steadiness. At 16, she was braver than he'd ever been, forged in the fires of their lost plantation life. But he saw the tremor in her fingers, the way she clung to the weapon like a talisman. The plan had been simple when they set out at dawn: skirt the triplets' claimed territory, use the hidden slough to reach the river, and leave this cursed stretch of bayou behind forever. Elias had bartered for Thibodeau's knowledge, promising coin from New Orleans contacts, but now the old Cajuns' maps were useless, soaked and illegible from the night's rain. They'd veered too far east, into the heart of the sisters' domain, the place where travelers vanished and gators grew fat on more than fish. A splash echoed from the left bank, sharp and deliberate. Elias froze, heart pounding. "Gator," he whispered. Thibodeau shook his head, poling slower. "Worse. Listen." From the underbrush came a giggle, high and childish, multiplied threefold like echoes in a hollow tree. It slithered through the air, innocent at first, then, twisting into something mocking, hungry. Lottie's hand tightened on the rifle. "They're toying with us. Like cats with a mouse." Elias swallowed hard, tasting bile. The stories Thibodeau had shared on the trail, whispered over a dying fire, painted the triplets as spawn of the bayou itself, born to a voodoo priestess in 1800, identical in their porcelain skin and raven hair, but cursed with appetites that no child should know. They'd claimed their first victim at 7, a peddler whose bones now bleached in the sun. Rivals feared them, lawmen avoided them, and history books, Thibodeau said, scrubbed their names clean to spare the fragile minds of the civilized world. But out here, in the sucking mud and fevered haze, truth festered like an open wound. The pirogue bumped against a submerged log, jolting them. Lottie swung the rifle up, sighting into the gloom. There, movement. A flicker of white darted between the roots, gone before Elias could focus. Then, another giggle, closer this time, from the right. "Backwater!" Thibodeau barked, reversing the pole with frantic urgency. But the boat shuddered, caught on something beneath. Elias leaned over, peering into the tea-colored depths, and his blood ran cold. Vines, no, ropes woven with bone beads, had snared the hull, pulled taut from both banks. The triplet's web. "Cut it loose!" Lottie cried, fumbling for her knife. She slashed at the nearest line, but it held fast, braided thick as a man's wrist and slick with some oily residue that burned her skin on contact. Blisters rose instantly, red and weeping. She bit back a scream, dropping the blade into the water. Elias grabbed an oar, hacking wildly, but the ropes only tightened, tilting the pirogue precariously. Water sloshed in, cold and alive with unseen things. Thibodeau abandoned the pole, drawing his own knife, a jagged affair etched with protective symbols, and lunged forward to help. "Hold steady, girl. We ain't their supper yet." The giggles swelled into laughter, surrounding them now, as if the bayou itself mocked their struggle. A small face peered from the ferns, eyes black as midnight pools, lips curled in a smile that revealed teeth filed to points. One of the sisters, Elias couldn't tell which, they were mirrors of malice. She blew a kiss, and the ropes yanked harder, nearly capsizing them. Thibodeau slashed through a strand, cursing in Creole, but the effort cost him. He slumped against the side, clutching his infected arm, face ashen. "Poison, it's in the vines. They're coming for us." Lottie fired the rifle into the undergrowth, the crack shattering the humid silence. Birds exploded from the trees, but the face vanished without a trace. The shot bought them a moment. The ropes loosened just enough for Elias to shove the boat free with the oar. They drifted backward, propelled by Thibodeau's weakening pushes, into a narrower channel where the cypresses leaned like conspirators. Panting, Elias pulled Lottie close as she reloaded, her blistered hand shaking. "We can't keep running blind. That slough's our only shot." Thibodeau nodded weakly from the stern. Due west, till the water the cypress trees loomed like silent sentinels, their roots clawing into the brackish water as Elias pushed the pirogue forward with a steady pole. The air hung thick, laced with the metallic tang of impending rain and something fouler beneath, decay that no storm could wash away. Beside him, Clara gripped the edge of the boat, her knuckles white, eyes fixed on the narrow channel ahead. She hadn't spoken since they'd found the first marker, a child's shoe, half sunk in the mud, its lace frayed like a warning. Remy, the guide who'd sworn he knew every twist of the bayou, trailed in a second boat, his paddle dipping silently now, no more of his usual gruff chatter to fill the quiet. Elias felt the weight of the journal in his satchel, its pages brittle with age, recounting whispers of the triplets. Born in 89, they said, to a voodoo priestess who cursed them with eyes that saw souls unravel. Not devils, the old tales claimed, but, worse, girls who mimicked innocence until the trap snapped shut. He'd come for proof, for the Historical Society back in New Orleans, but Clara had followed out of spite, her brother's disappearance 3 months prior still a raw wound. "They're just stories," she'd said at the start, but her voice had thinned with each mile. A ripple broke the surface ahead, too deliberate for an alligator. Remy froze, his boat bumping theirs. "We turn back," he muttered, the first words in hours. His face, weathered by sun and suspicion, creased deeper. "Ain't no glory in this fog." Clara's laugh was sharp, brittle. "Turn back? After what we saw at the cabin?" She jerked her head toward the shore they'd skirted an hour ago, the abandoned shack with its door ajar, walls etched in symbols that twisted like veins. Inside, the air had reeked of herbs and blood, and, on the floor, a doll with 3 faces stitched from the same cloth, eyes sewn with black thread. Elias had pocketed a splinter of bone from the hearth, small and human, but he hadn't told her yet. The ripple returned, closer, circling. Elias poled harder, sweat stinging his eyes. The bayou narrowed, vines draping like nooses from the branches. In the dim light filtering through the moss, shadows played tricks, elongated figures darting between the trunks. One seemed to wave, a pale hand breaking the water's skin before vanishing. "They're watching," Clara whispered, her caution fracturing into fear. She wasn't the bold journalist anymore. The bayou had stripped that away, layer by layer. Remy spat over the side. "Always are. The triplets don't hunt alone, they call the water's own." His voice dropped, as if the trees might listen. He'd grown up on these stories, lost kin to the swamps, but guiding fools like Elias paid for his daughter's medicine. Now regret etched his every stroke. The pirogue scraped bottom, jolting them. Elias leaned over, peering into the murk. Roots tangled like bones below, and there, wedged in the silt, a locket, silver and tarnished, floating just out of reach. He extended his pole, hooking it, but, as it surfaced, the chain caught on something yielding. A gasp escaped him, the water bubbled, and a child's hand, small, cold, clutched the end, pulling taut. Clara screamed, short and raw, shoving away from the side. The hand yanked harder, the locket slipping free into Elias's grasp, but the grip lingered in his mind, fingers like wet roots. Remy reversed his paddle, eyes wide. "Paddle! Now!" They surged forward, the boat slicing through the current as thunder grumbled overhead. Rain began in fat drops, pattering the leaves, but it did nothing to clear the haze thickening around them. Elias opened the locket with trembling fingers. Inside, a miniature portrait of 3 girls, identical, smiling with teeth too sharp for innocence. Their eyes, pale, unblinking, seemed to follow him. Behind, the ripples multiplied, a wake trailing their escape. The bayou whispered, or perhaps it was laughter, faint and synchronized, echoing from 3 throats unseen. Elias snapped the locket shut, heart pounding. They'd come too far to flee, but the cost was mounting, Clara's resolve cracking, Remy's faith in the paths he'd known eroding. And, in the distance, through the veil of rain, a light flickered, not a lantern, but something paler, beckoning from the heart of the forbidden bend. As they rounded the curve, the shack came into view, not the one they'd passed, but larger, its roof sagging under vines, windows like empty sockets. Smoke curled from a chimney, lazy and inviting. Remy slowed, muttering prayers in Creole. "That's their hearth. We go closer, we don't come out." Clara's eyes hardened, fear twisting into defiance. "My brother's in there. Or what's left." She stood, unsteady, grabbing a branch to steady the boat. Elias wanted to pull her down, but the image of the hand, the bone in his satchel, held him silent. The rain sheeted now, blurring the world, but the light from the shack burned steady, a siren's call amid the storm. They drifted nearer, poles forgotten, the current pulling them in. Inside, shadows moved, 3 forms, small and deliberate, setting a table for unexpected guests. The bayou held its breath, waiting for the door to creak open. The cypress knees rose like twisted fingers from the murky water, clawing at the night sky as Elias paddled deeper into the heart of the bayou. His arms burned, each stroke pulling him further from the crumbling cabin where the triplets had made their final stand. Or so he thought. The air hung thick with the scent of decay, rotting leaves, stagnant pools, and something sharper, like blood left too long in the heat. He glanced back, the lantern's flicker barely piercing the gloom, but the shadows seemed to shift, whispering promises of pursuit. Marie clutched the edge of the pirogue, her knuckles white against the worn wood. She'd been silent since the scream, Clara's scream, cut short by the crack of Elias's rifle. But silence wasn't peace. It was the calm before the bayou claimed what was owed. "We can't stop," she murmured, her voice a thread in the humid dark. "They're not done. Twins or not, they're bound to this place like roots." Elias nodded, sweat stinging his eyes. The plan had been simple: lure them out, end the curse that had twisted 3 sisters into monsters. But nothing in the bayou was simple. The first triplet, Lila, had come at them with a knife glinting like a gator's tooth, her laugh echoing off the water before Marie's trap, a weighted net, dragged her under. Then, Beatrice, sly and venomous, had poisoned the air with her herbs until Elias's shot shattered the quiet. Clara was the last, the fiercest, her eyes burning with a hatred older than the swamps. She'd lunged from the mist, nails raking Elias's arm, drawing blood that now seeped warm through his sleeve. He'd fired true, but, as she fell, her lips curled in a smile that chilled him deeper than the wound. A ripple broke the surface ahead, too deliberate for a fish. Elias froze, paddle raised. The lantern swung, casting jagged shadows that danced like specters. "What was that?" Marie whispered, her breath quickening. Before he could answer, the water erupted. Clara's body, or what was left of it, bobbed up, bloated and unnatural, her eyes milky but fixed on them with impossible malice. No, not Clara. The triplets shared more than blood. They were woven from the same rotten thread, the bayou's dark magic binding them beyond death. Lila's hand burst from the depths, grasping at the pirogue's side, while Beatrice's voice slithered through the reeds, a hiss of laughter, promising reunion. Elias shoved the paddle hard, the boat lurching forward as would splintered under the assault. Marie grabbed the rifle, her hand steady despite the tremor in her voice. "Aim for the eyes," she said, firing into the churning water. The shot boomed, sending ripples that carried a gurgle of finality. But the pool didn't stop. The bayou itself seemed to conspire, vines snaking from the banks to snag the hull. He rowed with everything left, muscles screaming, the wound throbbing like a second heartbeat. Marie reloaded, her face set in grim determination. The cautious healer turned avenger. They broke free at last, the pirogue scraping onto a mud bank under a canopy of stars peeking through the moss. The water stilled behind them, the whispers fading to the hum of insects. Dawn crept in, grey and unforgiving, as they dragged the boat ashore. Elias's arm hung useless now, fever already setting in, but the triplets' reign ended here, their evil sunk back into the swamp that birthed it. Marie bound his wound with strips from her skirt, her touch firm. "We'll burn the cabin," she said. "Salt the ground. But the bayou remembers." He looked at her, the weight of survival settling like morning fog. They were free, but scarred, haunted by the cost of unraveling such darkness. As the sun rose, the water lapped quietly, hiding its secrets once more.